All right, it is 11:01. We might have some more people trickle in, but just to be respectful of everyone's time, we'll go ahead and get into it. Welcome to Cutting the Bullshit SEO Strategies That Actually Matter for Home Inspectors. I'm Olivia. If I haven't met you yet, I'm so excited to have you here today. I work on Spectora's marketing team, and I'm here today with Kevin Wagstaff, who probably needs no introduction to this group, but I'll let him introduce himself anyway.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. It's a topic Olivia and I love to talk about, and it's critically important. So kudos to you for being here.
Yes, absolutely. And before we go ahead and get to today's agenda, I just want to say I got into SEO about 3 years ago. And before that, I hadn't even heard the word SEO. I could not have told you what search engine optimization was. And I just want to start with that to let you know that SEO, while it can sound scary, is very approachable, especially at the level you'll need it for as a home inspector. And so with that, we can go ahead and start talking about what we'll cover today. And I promise this will help you, and it's not that hard to get started. So today, we'll be talking about why SEO actually matters. And a lot of this webinar, we're going to spend focusing on the actual business impacts that you are going to feel from having an SEO strategy. So with that, we're going to talk about what actually moves the needle and break this down into two easy tiers. Tier 1 is the most impactful. So whether you're just getting started with SEO or if you have SEO and you aren't feeling the results, we're going to break down with no jargon, no BS, what you need to be focusing on. And then we'll talk about other areas of SEO tier 2 once you're looking at a decent foundation of SEO where you can go to really stand out in your local area and next steps you can take. And then as always, we'll end this webinar with Q&A. You can write your questions into the little Q&A bubble you should see at the bottom of your screen. We also have the chat, so write into the chat if you have any technical difficulties or need anything from any of us on the webinar team. I also want to quickly shout out, in the room with us are James, he's our head of marketing here at Spectora, and Elias, he's our local SEO expert. They'll be here to answer questions as well. So with that said, let's get into it. So first things first, I think Kevin and I should break down how is this different than our last SEO webinar. And a couple months ago, we put on a webinar where we were talking about the technical aspects you need to focus on for your SEO. And we got really into the actual strategy and understanding a lot of the terms that are talked about. And that was great, but I got some feedback after that from inspectors who attended that basically said, we don't know anything about the start of SEO. How does this actually impact my business? And I said, well, that's a great point. So this is going to be talking about how you'll actually feel the impact once you start an SEO strategy. Kevin, do you have anything to add on that?
I just want to encourage everyone to take a deep breath and realize, again, I can't reiterate enough that the topic of SEO is really loaded, and the narrative around it is always that it's this black box and it's hard to understand, and it really isn't. And I think that's what the whole point of this webinar is today.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So with that, why does SEO actually matter? Let's get into it. First of all, when you take out all the jargon, you forget about the optimization, you forget about terms like title tags and meta descriptions and local 3-pack. Search engine optimization is simply the process you take to be visible online. And you need to be visible online. There are a couple reasons we'll get into, but Kevin, I'd love you to touch on why being visible online is so important, especially in today's market.
So we talk a lot about meeting real estate agents when you're a new or even existing inspector. It's kind of what feeds your guys' business. I think what often gets ignored is the clients and even the real estate agents that find you by Googling home inspector your market. So home inspector Austin, home inspector Denver. And it happens anywhere from a couple hundred to a couple thousand times a month. And that's provable from data from Google. So it's a very real thing. I think most inspectors don't know those numbers. So it's easy to say, oh, no one searches in my market, or it doesn't matter if I'm on Google. Whereas we've seen companies really build a stable business and have balance in their business as a result of being at the top of the rankings or showing on the Google Maps when people search for you. So it's one of those like hidden magnifiers that helps your business and just compounds your revenue. Should you focus on it on day one? Probably not, but it's something to be thinking about.
Absolutely. And with that, you might say, what about my other marketing strategies? What about these other areas where I'm spending time or spending money? And first of all, just getting this off the bat, all marketing strategies are important. We're not saying don't do any of this, but we do want to illustrate why SEO is important on top of this. So like, let's say, for example, you're getting a lot of business just from word of mouth. Like you have a great reputation in your service areas. Agents are recommending you, home buyers are recommending you to other home buyers. Word of mouth is great, but it won't capture people searching online. And this is important because, as Kevin just touched on, there are a lot of people in your local market that we can guarantee are searching for a home inspector online. And you always want more business, right? And even if you're booked and busy, it's amazing to have your name out there and to build that reputation everywhere you can. So you need to be visible online for anyone searching there. And then on a not SEO point, being visible online is also hugely important, because what's the first thing a home buyer is going to do after they hear about you from an agent? They're going to Google you, right? They want to make sure you have a good website. They want to see some good reviews from other home buyers saying that they've had a good experience. So even if online bookings aren't your primary form of acquiring clients and business, they're going to be Googling you, and you want to look good there. Another thing, like,
one thing I'll add, Olivia, is like, I don't want you guys to do all the work that we kind of teach and preach around going to open houses, going to brokerage firms, looking up agents, reaching out to them, only for them to maybe tell other agents in their office, and then they Google you and don't find anything. So you're like kind of capping the effectiveness of everything else you're doing if you're just ignoring the whole digital side of the world. Sorry, Olivia.
No, thank you for that. That's a great point. Another thing is, like, paid ads are great, but that's really expensive. And we'll break this down a little bit later. SEO can be expensive, but you're likely not going to, with what you as home inspectors need, especially if you're just starting out, pay as much for SEO per month as you would running a ton of ads. And then another one, like, social media is awesome. Please keep up a social media presence, but it does require on people searching for you specifically. So if you're just having your digital presence come from social media, that's awesome, but you're missing a lot of potential clients and booked inspections. So that, let's run through a little scenario quickly. And this is touching on what I just talked about. But if you're a homeowner, so take off your home inspector hat real quick and put yourself in the home buyer shoes. Who do you pick? You have home inspector A, who has a great social media presence, maybe recommended an agent, but they have an unprofessional or messy website. They're not easily findable online, and they have no or few online reviews. And then you have home inspector B, who has an awesome social media presence, is recommended by agent, and then on top of that, you have an easily navigable, clean website, an online presence, and good and on views. So who are you picking? An answer I've gotten when I've posed this scenario to home inspectors before is that, okay, home inspector A is a better home inspector. Yeah, they totally could be, but home inspector B looks better, and because of that, that probably gets more business. That's important, right, Kevin? Like, optics matter.
Visibility wins more times than not over knowledge of electrical panels, HVAC, like, and all these things are important. We're not saying that. We're just saying there's two sides to this. There's the technical side, and then there's where are you and can they find you?
Absolutely. And it's just important because if you're a great home inspector, which we know all of you are, and you're giving an awesome inspection, but a home buyer who's coming in with no knowledge of what a good home inspection actually looks like, can't see the more like business professional side of you, that's something you're potentially losing out on. And that's why all of this is really important and can actually have a huge impact on your business. So with all that said, don't be Home Inspector A. You want to be ready to get the boost of online bookings whenever, even if you don't need it right now, even if you're getting good bookings from other channels. That's not to say there won't be a time when you need to rely on your online presence. And so that's why this is all important. With that said, there's something I want to touch on, and that's how do you know if an SEO service is total bullshit? And there's no one way, but I want to just quickly talk through some red flags and talk about why SEO can feel like a whole lot of smoke and mirrors, even when it's not. So the first thing is, if you're spending a ton of money on SEO over lots of months and years, and you're not seeing any of those results, it's probably time to look at your SEO strategy again. Another thing is you might hear someone talking about, oh, you need tons of blog posts, you need a ton of content, you need to be getting backlinks when you're talking about SEO. Yes, you do, but if that strategy is not working, it's likely because the foundations of your SEO are lacking. And that's what we'll really get into today. This all comes with a huge caveat, though, is that SEO takes time. And that's talking about why SEO can feel like it's not doing anything. The general rule of thumb is that SEO, after you put a good amount of work in, it'll take anywhere from like 3 to 6 months to see those results, right? So we really want to emphasize that, yes, it will take time. And if you don't know anything about SEO and you're coming in, you're saying, well, I'm paying someone, however much money a month to do this, and it's not working. Let it settle for a little bit. And then, after 6 months to a year is up, if you're still not seeing any results, then it might be time to reevaluate what you're doing and who you're working with. And just with that out of the way, let's talk about the very real ways that SEO can benefit your business. First of all, more clients is more money. This obviously isn't unique to SEO, but like any other marketing strategy, plain and simple, SEO gets you in front of clients. So anyone Googling if your SEO is good will see you when they're searching for a home inspector in your service area, right? And as we talked about, that's super important. It increases your chances of booking an inspection. So people have a lot more purchasing power online. And what that is basically, think about if someone's hearing from you from a friend, they might not be in the place to sit down and book a home inspection, where if they're searching online and can get to your website, they have the ability to book that home inspection right away. So being visible online maximizes your chances of someone booking that inspection really fast. Or even if they're not booking online, if they find your Google business profile, there should be a link right there to call you, right? So it just speeds up that journey a little bit and takes away the chance of someone hearing about you from a friend and not being able to sit down and book them, maybe forgetting your name. Kevin, do you have any thoughts there?
Many of you probably aren't at the point of thinking about how efficient your business is and different ways you can spend your time. But each time someone finds you online, books the inspection, pays for it, signs the agreement, and it's on your calendar, and you don't have to do anything, that gives you more time to have mind space to focus on marketing, spend time with your family, do anything else. And so this industry has been extremely slow to think that way. And I think that's why we keep banging the table on this.
Absolutely. And then again, just has the potential to increase your revenue. Before we move on to the next slide, I saw a chat that my sound might be going in and out. Kevin, are you hearing me okay? Or other people in the chat, can you hear me all right?
It was spotty for a second there, but it feels clean now.
Okay, great. I will try and work on that. Just let me know if it happens again. Wonderful. All right. Thanks for bearing with me. Sorry, that is the downside of a Zoom webinar sometimes, is that not everything will be perfect. All right, getting back into SEO and business impacts, let's do some math real quick. So let's say you spend about $1,000 a year on SEO and you charge $400 a year on home inspection. $1,000 a year is a lot to shell out, right? Like that feels huge. I'm using this as a number. I don't know what you spend on SEO, but that can be something that gives you a little sticker shock, especially if you don't know what SEO is. Well, in this hypothetical scenario, if you're charging $400 per inspection, if you just get 3 booked inspections from your Google Business Profile website in that whole year, you have a positive ROI. And now I know you could get more into the semantics of this and thinking, okay, how much revenue are you actually making from that inspection? But 3 bookings online is not a lot for an entire year. If your SEO is good, there's a chance you're going to see a lot more than that. So it really doesn't have to be expensive. And more than anything, it's important to put that expense in context and think about, okay, yes, SEO can seem expensive, but how is that actually going to pay off, right? All right, getting into the next point of this, Kevin and I have already talked a bit about online search, but local online reach is important. Just to throw some numbers at you, in the US, 50,000 people search for home inspector near me every year. So what that is, Google has some ability to understand your location, and home buyers or realtors are searching for home inspectors near me in the US every year. That doesn't even account for searches where they type in home inspector in Boston, for example, or your specific service area. There are a ton of people looking, and you want to be there when they search. All right, Kevin, I'm Gen Z, you're a millennial. Let's talk about people who are coming into the market in the coming years. Where do we look for local services primarily?
It's Google. It's a game in town. And we look for signals on Google, visibility, reviews. We'll get into it, but it's muscle memory at this point. I think if you're under the age of 50, and that's if you're over the age of 50, you just have to believe us that that's how we operate and work. But I think it's pretty clear. I think even when we're recommended a name, we go and Google it.
Yep, absolutely. And I think this is really important to think about because right now, your primary clientele might not be in their 30s, but in a couple of years, they will be. I'm just getting to the age where a lot of my friends are starting to think about buying homes, saving for down payments. And this is just the way that younger generations, for better or for worse, get their information. And so even if it's not important right now, this is incredibly important for the future. And as we said, SEO takes time to build. We should definitely be thinking towards the future as just a home inspection community of, okay, how can we set ourselves up for success, not next month, not next quarter, but in the coming 5 years, 10 years, even as you're building your business.
One other point, Olivia, we may get to this, but I just want to remind everyone that the forecast is still for about 4 million plus homes to be sold in the next 12 months. So whatever narrative or headlines you read about Gen Z or millennials not being able to afford homes, there are many that can and will buy homes. And so I think that I just wanted to squash that because the data is kind of what we always look to.
Absolutely. And I can just tell you from a personal perspective and anecdote, all of my friends are starting to seriously think about this and come into the market. We'll be there. So basically all this to say, don't need to harp on it too much, but local online reach is important. Start building now so you're not scrambling later. Next, we're going to talk about competitive advantage. So a question I actually got for this webinar is like, what if all the inspectors in my area have really good SEO? First of all, they probably don't. I can promise you there are a lot of you at this webinar who are starting to think about SEO. And there are a lot of other inspectors in your market who are probably not even thinking about SEO. And that's important. But let's say, just for the sake of this, let's say everyone in your local market has an awesome Google business profile, they're ranking well. If you start building your SEO now, you might not outrank all of them, but you will outrank some of them. And that's really important because let's say the first guy on, your local ranking in the Google 3-pack isn't available for an inspection, or their prices are too high or whatever. You can be the next guy, and being the next guy is hugely important because you'll get business. The other thing that's important to talk about here is, again, SEO builds out over time. If you feel like you're starting now and you're not at the top of your local 3-pack, people go in and out of business, SEO changes. If you start building now, you'll really be setting yourself up for success, and you'll have something on your competitors. So with all of that, just to start wrapping up this section, SEO is a lot like planting a tree, right? The foundations of the SEO that you start building now will pay off for months and even years. And it is a long process, which I know is frustrating to anyone who's not familiar with the SEO world. But investment will truly pay off for years. So a good example of this is like Google reviews. Reviews obviously accumulate over time. Even if you're starting now and you have a competitor in your area who has 50 something reviews or 70 something reviews, be the guy who gets 150 Google reviews. It's not going to happen all at once. But if you're really focusing on that aspect of business, you're not only building your SEO, but you're also building your credibility.
Beauty of SEO is that it's long-term thinking. It's like medium to long-term thinking, which means it's more sustainable. So despite myths out there around SEO rankings changing every week, or you could just drop out overnight, pretty rare to see. You'd have to violate their rules in a bad way, or have some type of fraud going on. But it's worth having because it just keeps feeding you year after year, and it's a beautiful thing, as opposed to paid ads, which is like a spigot that you turn on and off.
Ooh, that's a great analogy. I really like that because, yeah, it is, unless in the very rare event, as Kevin said, someone will drop off immediately. But more than anything, it's just a little good work over time goes a really long way. And I just wanted to throw in this proverb really quickly to talk about planting a tree. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, like, okay, I haven't done anything with SEO at all, great, that's fine. Get started today. You can't go back and do that before, but you can get started now. And everyone at this webinar, you're learning. That's awesome. Another thing that's important to touch on is for all of you who are like, okay, I can't see if my SEO is actually working. I can't see if this is doing anything. I'm going to come back at that and say, yes, you can. The best thing about SEO is it's super trackable, and especially local SEO with a Google business profile, you can track all the necessary metrics you need. So for example, I have a screenshot. You can see your total searches, your average ranking, your total reviews, and you can filter this even by what time period you're looking on and look year over year or month over month to see how you might be progressing. And all of those stats won't only inform how much you invest in SEO strategy, but they'll also inform how you run your business. And I just think this is so important for SEO, but also any marketing strategy you might be working on is please do track your results and look at this and make sure that what you're paying for is paying off. And so, again, I just want to touch on this because I feel like I've gotten a lot of questions from inspectors saying, how do I know when it's actually working when I know nothing about SEO? You don't need to know everything about SEO to see how many searches your business are getting, how many reviews you're getting, how many people are calling or booking from your Google business profile, right? You just need to know that they are without knowing SEO strategy, and that's really important. Any thoughts there, Kevin? Because I think this is a really important one.
Tracking's everything. It's usually what doesn't get talked about by the fancy agencies that want to charge you a couple grand a month. So look out for that. I think the final piece is how many online bookings are you getting through Spectora. You can check that and track that in your dashboard. So I think that takes it full circle. And if you have a bunch of searches and profile views, but no bookings, okay, you go to the drawing board and say, okay, look at my website, look at my pricing, my services offered, and kind of see where you could have gaps there.
Absolutely. All right. And because you all are probably sick of me telling you why SEO matters at this point, let's get into what is actually going to move the needle and what foundational pieces you really need to have to start building your SEO. Or if you've already worked a lot on SEO, what foundational pieces you might need to revisit if you're not seeing good results. So we're going to talk about this in terms of tier 1 and tier 2. And tier 1 is what I would encourage everyone to start working on as soon as you can. There are 4 things that we put in tier 1 for today, which is a good website, your Google business profile, reviews, and consistent listings. So let's go ahead and break all of this down. You need a good website. And I think that it's really interesting because for me, I'm used, and people, I think in my generation, just people in today's world, we're used to seeing good websites, right? So it can be really jarring if we come across a super outdated website that's hard to navigate. So let's talk about what a good website is. It's easy to navigate, so top nav menu should look good. It should be really easy to book an inspection from that website and very clear to anyone landing on it how they can get to the next step. Another really important one is every website should be mobile friendly. So it should be optimized for mobile design because a large percentage of online searches are done on mobile, right? So you need to make sure when you're working with your web developer, that they're making sure that your website is going to work just as well on a phone as it will on your desktop. And if you're working with Spectora for your websites, this is something we absolutely do. But it's just always good to check and make sure you let your web designer know, hey, this is something I care about, and you're not going to spend a ton of money on a website that's not working on desktop, right? Then another thing is just well designed and nice to look at. Like it or not, aesthetics are important. So there are two images at the bottom of this slide. On the right, this is just a random website I pulled from the internet, but like you don't want your website to look like that. To me, I'm like, okay, what do I even do there? I can search for x-ray products. Like it just looks bad. And I think this is especially important if you're considering agents landing on your website as well, right? Because we know that agents care about aesthetics. They care about something looking professional. And so you want your website to meet anyone there and showcase your business well. And then lastly, of course, a good website will be SEO friendly, so designed with SEO in mind, and you need to have good meta descriptions and title tags, all of that good stuff. So I just have another slide on here that I just want to show you what some of this will look like. So when we say an easy top navigation, I just use Spectora's as an example. If you go, there's this really nice menu up top, right? And you can see the drop down. So for any inspectors landing on our website, they can see where they can get software, Jumpstart, business tools, all of that good stuff. And that's really important because if you have a ton of website pages, but no one can find them, it's not going to be a good experience for anyone landing on your site. A second one is clear CTAs. So going back to what we were talking about earlier with making it really easy to book an inspection, you probably want that on almost every page of your website to make sure that once your SEO is working and someone is actually landing on your website, they can easily take the next step and book an inspection. Other important things that go into a good website are branding. You want your logo, you want it to be clear that this website belongs to you. Brand impressions matter, right? You want that to stick in someone's mind. And then on the more SEO front, a fast load time is important. Again, like with Spectora websites, this is something you won't have to worry about. But if people are getting to your website and have to wait a ton of time for the content are going to load, they're probably going to leave. People have short attention spans, and it might not seem like a huge deal, but that is something you need to focus on. On the other side of that, it also goes into how Google evaluates your website. So if your website's not loading fast, that's actually something that Google cares about and could drop your rankings. Aside from that, if you're focusing on content, you'll want well-written content across your website. And that's not to say you need a ton of content, like as much as bigger websites have, but you want any content that's on your website to be well-written, to be useful and helpful to anyone landing there. And yeah, I think maybe that goes without saying, but I do want to touch on it because I'm in the content world and that's important to me. And then lastly are title tags and meta descriptions. And Kevin, do you want to give a little rundown of what title tags and meta descriptions even are and why they matter?
Yeah, well, we'll try not to go too far down the rabbit hole here, but each page essentially has a header on it that is visible to Google. So think of it as just the title of each page. And if the title of your home page is Home Inspector Denver, Colorado, all that does is let Google know that you are relevant for that keyword. And we're not talking about spamming that on the page or copying and pasting that 100 times. That doesn't work anymore. This is more of a slightly technical piece that a good web designer will incorporate for you while building it, something you probably don't have to worry about, but we wanted to give you a little exposure to make sure you at least know what to look for or what to make sure is there. But a good designer will make sure that's there from the start.
Absolutely.
Oh, one other thing. You mentioned content, if you can go back. We build like a for agents page for every site we build, and that you need to know that you're talking to two different personas through your website when you're new, and majority of them will be agents to start. So don't forget to have a page for them, or a happy agents page, or what benefits agents will have, because remember, each one you talk to, they might go Google you and land on your site. So that's just more like for the human eye, you need to be prepared to speak to two different people.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that, Kevin, because I really do want a big takeaway from this webinar is that the areas you're focusing on with SEO are also areas that are benefiting you in other aspects of your business. So it's not like SEO, yes, it's the process of becoming searchable online, but all of these have impacts on real people. And I think it's really easy to separate the two in your mind. But like ranking in SEO is important to get the people on your page. And then once you have a good website that has good content and that's easily navigable, there's going to be a real agent or a real home buyer landing on that page. And it's kind of a win-win situation, right? Like if you're taking these good steps to help anyone on your who lands on your website have a good experience there, those are also good signals to Google. So that was a bit of a long-winded explanation, but I think it's important to connect the two and understand the many layers of SEO and how it's important.
Such a good point.
Second thing we need to talk about in this tier 1 segment is a built out Google business profile. So I used this example in the last SEO webinar because it's just too good, but these are two Google business profiles side by side. And so if anyone just wants to write into the chat and tell me which one just looks better, feel free to do that. But I'm going to break down on these pages what's actually working here and what's not. So on the left, we have Carl's Electric, and a win for Carl's Electric is that great, their name is there. That's awesome. They have an address that's actually there and showing up in maps, and that's great. And they have a phone number. So this is like the very bare minimum, and it's not going to look great to anyone landing on your Google business profile, but it's also not sending good signals to Google because there's so many areas that are missing information, right? So if we look on the right at Ernie's Electric, they immediately have the link to their website. You can see they have a ton of great Google reviews. There's an easy way for someone to get directions to their in-person location if they need it. They have a great business description that even gets into some of their values. Right here it reads family owned and operated business providing electrical and HVAC installations and repairs. And there are two really great things about this description is, first of all, it has some important keywords. So we don't need to dive super deep into what keywords are today, but for you, you would want to put that you are a home inspector, or if you offer other services like mold or radon or any of that good stuff, put that in your business description. It also has their hours that they're open, phone number, questions and answers. And so it's not only does this look a lot better, but all of this information is important to Google, right? And something that I want to emphasize is you do not need to pay someone to do your Google business profile for you. Like if you're saying, oh, SEO is just too much money, this is the best first step you can take, is making sure that your Google business profile is built out, that you have some photos on there, that all the information is correct, because that's really important, not just for anyone landing on the page, but as signals to Google as well. So if you are thinking, oh my gosh, my Google business profile looks a little bit like Carl's Electric on the left, great, you have your first step and takeaway from this webinar. You can go fill out that Google business profile. With that, I just want to include this, and I won't spend a ton of time on it, but things that every Google business profile should have. Like we looked at, they should have your NAP, which is an acronym for name, address, and phone number. These are really the most important details, and we're actually going to talk about why these need to be consistent across all of your listings in just a moment. You need your business description. So what exactly is it you do? And hot tip is to add your location and relevant keywords to your business description, like we just talked about. You'll need your service areas. So on a Google business profile, you can list all of your service areas, and that's just where do you operate? And something interesting, it's a question I got from another inspector at a conference I was recently at, was, okay, I rank really well in my local service area, but there's a big city, 30 minutes away that I'd like to rank in. The bad news there is that Google just basically values locality. So if your address is in a certain town, you're probably going to rank better in that town than the big city. But what you can do is, if you have distinct service areas, you can actually build multiple Google business profiles. I don't say go crazy on this. Like if it's just 2 towns, don't have a Google business profile for each town. But if you're operating across state lines, like up in New England, where we have really small states, I know there are a ton of inspectors who are in Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts, for example. You can build out a Google business profile for those different states. And if you can, just have a local address you can list there. You don't need to actually be there, but if you have somewhere that you can have as like a base location, that is kind of a hot tip to get your rankings up, because that's a question I get all the time. Moving on, you need to put your hours of operation of when you're open. Images are really great. Like if we actually click back to this last slide, one of the reasons why Ernie's Electric looks good is because it feels personal, right? It has some images of their business, and I'd encourage you to do the same, whether it's a picture of you inspecting a home or even just, your headshot that you might have in the about section of your website. Put that there. FAQs, you can answer some of your most commonly asked questions. Not every Google business profile is going to have this, and it's not quite as important. But if people are asking questions on your Google business profile, pay attention to that and answer them. And then lastly, reviews. And we're going to talk much more about reviews, but do people like your business? You better point them right to Google to write that review. With that said, it's a great segue into reviews. Something I want to focus on, and Kevin, I'd just love to hear your thoughts on, is the hierarchy of Google reviews and reviews in other places.
Yes, Google reviews are at the top. That's where people search. The largest search engine, 80+% searches happen there. So that is what you need to focus on for, I'd say, year one. It's a race to 50 to 100 reviews, or even start with getting to 10 before you start worrying about Facebook, Angie's List, Spectora reviews. There's plenty of other places you can get reviews, but focus on the mothership first, and that's Google.
Yeah, and I thank you for saying that. And I wanted to touch on that specifically because I get this question a lot with Google reviews versus Spectora reviews. And, should I be doing one over the other? Start with Google reviews if you don't have them. If you have a ton of Spectora reviews but no Google reviews, you better be pointing people to Google first, because that's what's really going to matter as a Google ranking factor. And the reality is that's just where you're more visible, is Google. So it will build trust with people online to see that, and it's also going to build trust with Google and up your potential of ranking really highly in that local 3-back. And then just on a more business standpoint, the more 5-star reviews you get, it shows quality service over time. So connecting this back to like SEO is not 1 or 2 actions you take and then bada bing, bada boom, you're done. If you amass reviews over years, that's going to show anyone landing on that profile that you've been doing your thing really well for so long. So with that said, reviews are important. Please get them. And on the subject of getting reviews, I just want to talk, quickly about why you should be making this like an actual process, not just saying, oh, on site, like, hey, if you think about it, homeowner, please leave me a review. You should be texting or emailing follow-ups or asking on site and having a good option for someone to actually like leave that review while you're both present at the inspection. And the follow-ups, we have options to do this through Spectora. Kevin, do you want to talk about that just a little bit and what that might look like if they're using some form of automation to get
Yeah,
reviews?
absolutely. It's a must. You immediately, I want everyone to get over worrying about asking too many times. This is something you cannot take for granted, and people are busy. People ignore texts, emails, even verbals, and that's why we have this three-prong approach. You want to have an ask pretty much in every email or text, and it can be at the bottom of the email or text, but it needs to be there with a link of where to leave a review. I'm a big believer on this third piece, ask on site. Because when you look someone in the eyes and shake their hand and tell them you're a local small business that's early in their careers, and it means a ton to get a local review if they were happy with the service, and they say, yeah, I'll do that, and then you tell them you'll get that email later tonight, that is crystal clear as it gets. That leaves very little room for error, and now there's accountability. They told you they'd do it. They know when the email or text is coming. That, I believe, if you start with that from the start, you can get to 5, 10, 20 really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's important. And I just say, touching on that, asking on site is awesome because you have that human interaction, but make sure you're giving them an easy way to actually leave that review when you're doing that, just so they don't forget. Like, someone buying a home is very busy, it's a stressful time. You want to make that process really easy for them. Then last but not least, we have consistent listings. So what is a listing? This is places where your business information, paid or unpaid, whether you're the one putting it there or whether it's being pulled there, all of that is appearing. So for some examples are like Yelp, Angie's List, Facebook, and you need to keep these consistent. And I think this is a piece of local SEO that people can forget about, because it's really hard to manage all your listings in one place, right? Like, say you update your hours or your business address changes. It's not just updating that on your website and your Google business profile, it's updating that everywhere you're listed. And the harm with inconsistent information isn't just that people might get confused, it's that Google actually takes that into consideration if your listings are inconsistent. The good news is you don't have to do this manually. Good local SEO services will actually do listing management for you. So that's important. And on that note, I have a homework assignment for everyone. And I know you probably didn't sign up for this webinar thinking you'd get homework. I promise this is easy. If everyone just wants to write down this address, so it's just scan.spectora.com, it will take you to a page that looks like this. And if you don't have a way to write it down right now, we will be sending out the slide deck and the webinar recording tomorrow, so you don't have to do this right away. But when you go there, you'll enter some business details, and once you do, it will bring you to a page that looks a lot like this. And so I just made up a fake business, so I have a 100% error rate, but this tool can actually show you how many of your listings are showing incorrect information. And this is really important because there are probably listings you're being shown on that you don't even know you have, right? But it's important that that information is incorrect. And this website will actually break exactly down what listings are missing, and it'll show you how many inaccurate sites you have. And it's a really great tool to kind of just for all of you to see, okay, how much time and effort do I need to put into this? You want to generally be getting up, obviously less than a 100% error rate, but to pretty close to a perfect listings rate. And with that, I just want to touch on tier 2. I'm going to spend not too much time talking about this because I want to leave plenty of time for questions, but everything we just talked about are the really, really important things you need to be doing for SEO. If you're just getting started, I would say actually don't start focusing on blog posts. Don't start focusing on backlinks. Really get your website, your Google business profile, your reviews, and your listings under control. And that's what's going to actually start moving the needle. When you want to move into tier 2 SEO and get a little bit more advanced, blog posts are amazing. Start writing them. They will help your website rank better, and they'll provide more information that you can share through email marketing or anything like that. But it's not going to move the needle if you don't have the foundations of SEO down. Same with backlinks. So if you've done research on SEO, you've probably heard the term backlinks before. And essentially what that is someone linking back to your website. Again, it's important, it builds site authority, but you don't necessarily need to start focusing on that right off the bat if this all feels overwhelming. And basically, why are these tier 2? Both blog posts and backlinks are great for SEO, but you don't need to start paying a ton of money and investing a ton of time in them if you don't have your SEO foundations down. So we're not saying ignore blog posts, don't do it. Please still write them when you have the time. But we're saying if you're writing a ton of blog posts and you don't have the other aspects of your SEO down pat and you're not seeing results, take a break, reevaluate the rest of your SEO strategy, and then get back once you're in a much better place with your SEO. Kevin, do you have anything to add on this?
It's more of a tier, maybe 1.5 if you want to break into, say, the big city that's nearby you. I think nothing beats going to that city and going and meeting with agents and trying to get a few inspections from that city and area. And then you get reviews from people that are based in that big city, which signals to Google that you might be relevant there. So it's the real world kind of merging with SEO there when you think about breaking into a big city near you.
Absolutely. All right. And then lastly, I just want to, because I got a couple questions of this on the webinar sign up form, is SEO Boost. Basically, this is Spectora's solution for a lot of those basics of SEO. So for example, listing directories. Something we didn't have a ton of time to talk about is voice search command listings, but that's important. And what this is basically the foundations you need to get your SEO started and really up your local presence, right? And so if you're interested in how Spectora can help with a really basic SEO solution, I encourage you to ask questions. We can get you in touch with your account manager or just on the chat bubble. But because I got some questions about it, I wanted to let you know that this is a solution that's available. Relative to other SEO, it's probably going to be a lot more affordable for you because it's really only focusing on those foundational aspects. So if you have any questions, we are here to answer them, but I just wanted to shout that out. And with that, I want to end this on the note of this may seem hard, especially if you have no background in marketing and SEO and content, but you can do it. I think everything Kevin and I talked about in this webinar is absolutely doable. Whether you're outsourcing parts of it or whether you're doing some of it yourself, like working on your Google business profile, it's totally possible. And when you do it, you're probably going to be doing a lot more than other inspectors in your area. So I know it can feel overwhelming, but we believe in you guys. Anything else you want to say to wrap this up before we move on to questions, Kev?
Just don't bury your heads. It's like it'd be like me and Olivia trying to learn about an AC condenser unit. It's like we just need to ask questions and learn enough to be dangerous and go from there. And I think that's what you guys need to keep doing. Keep asking questions, keep trying to learn the basics. But there are professionals that you can outsource things to if you don't want to deal with it.
Absolutely. And James, do we have any questions? If you haven't asked them yet, folks, feel free to write them in that Q&A box and we'll answer them right now.
Yes, lots of questions asked. Let me just grab the first one. First one, what do you guys think of Google Local Ads and Google Guaranteed? Had AC company and had lots of shopping. Have you guys seen different in home inspection? So Google Local Ads, thoughts?
I actually do not have an answer on that. Do you, Kevin?
I've only heard about 5 firsthand stories from inspectors. I think it was like 3 or 4 of them had a good experience and got some jobs from it. So it's like anything, you guys are going to hate us. It depends and it's worth testing. I think if you set a fixed budget and go into it saying, okay, going to spend $500, am I going to get more than $500 worth of revenue back? But I think setting your budget and your timeline, it's got to be at least a couple $100, knowing how Google Ads in general work. Would you agree, Olivia?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I think the most important thing you hit on there is testing. Like, one solution that works for you isn't necessarily going to work for the next person over. So go into it with a lot of intentionality and then analyze your results. Like we talked about, tracking is hugely important. And if it works for you, that's awesome. But don't waste your budget and not track if you're not seeing some results.
Awesome. We are seeing some people putting in the chat that they are using Google local ads and they're actually getting good calls and business from it. So yes, probably depends on your area and what your competition is, but it sounds like there's an opportunity there. Next one's almost a follow-up. So they said that they're using Google local ads and they're getting leads that way, but they're mostly price shopping. They've booked inspections, but a lot of them are just price shopping, and it's really hard to get them booked. Do you guys have any tips of how to get somebody across the line when it feels like they're just out there looking for the best price?
Yeah, absolutely. My biggest tip would be, if someone's price shopping and just trying to find the lowest price, you need to educate them on why you're providing the best service and it is worth the price. So the strategy here isn't just provide the local price, but when you get on the phone with them, tell them your unique value props, what sets your inspection apart, why you are going to provide them the best possible inspection out of any other inspectors in your area, and give them a little bit of education too, whether that's just over the phone or offering to send them some information about, any homes in your local area, why a good inspection is important. I think like that's the barrier you need to break down, and that's how you're going to get them across the finish line, because there probably will be people who are just looking for the cheapest price, but you don't want to be the cheapest price if you're providing a good service, right? It's just all about making them realize they need that service.
I get so pumped about this. This is the hand-to-hand sales combat. I want to reframe this for everyone. I want you guys to get excited when someone talks about price, because you can educate them now. And this is a genuine insight from all of us being in this industry. It's like, oh my God, I'm so glad you brought that up. Like, here's absolutely why you do not want to shop only on price. How much is the home you're buying? Okay, what systems and components are in it? And have your little speech, your little elevator speech ready. But Olivia nailed that answer. I think like you just want to be excited when someone says that, because then now you're in education mode, and they are not expecting that. I promise you, they're not expecting to get educated.
Yeah, and just I'd say like from the perspective of someone who has never bought a home before but is starting to think about that, I, even working in this industry, don't really know a ton about an actual home and the home buying process, and it is very expensive. And so I think that just even providing them little tidbits of education and things that you might know really easily, but someone buying a home might not, about why a good home inspection is important, will go such a long way.
And give examples with real dollar figures and research them if you don't have any. If you haven't done an inspection, find out what it costs to repair a foundation. It's expensive and it's not worth $100 in savings up front.
Yep.
Fantastic answers there. Next one, and this one kind of fits on a little bit on the technical SEO side. Web hosting companies, are there some that are better than others? So WordPress versus Wix, for example, is there any thoughts on that?
I mean, yes, basic level, there are definitely some that are better than others. WordPress is great. I think Wix is good. I don't know as much about it, but basically, I'd say use the ones that are positively reviewed. I mean, connecting this back to SEO, you want to have something tried and true as far as your web hosting services. My go-to recommendation is always just WordPress, because I know it works and I know it's great. But Kevin, I'm curious if you have any additional thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, like we use WordPress, and let's strip out that bias. I just looked it up again. WordPress represents about 43% of all websites on the internet, and there's a reason for that. I think it's old, reliable, and it has the biggest ecosystem of plugins and tools that you can tap into. That's why we built on it initially. So I think that's what I go with. And then in terms of hosting, you can find hosting for probably like $10 a month anywhere. And so I think the difference you want to think about is if and when you need help. And being in this industry for 9 years now, we built our hosting platform because we knew inspectors needed edits, updates, security, management, like hands-on. That's why we charge more for our hosting than GoDaddy or Bluehost. But like, yeah, you can host there, but when you need to get a hold of someone, it's probably going to be a call center, probably going to be someone that doesn't know your site or the industry. So there's trade-offs there. Again, acknowledging bias, I don't think it's worth the extra 10, 20, $30 a month to go the generic route.
Yeah, I think that's
Great.
very well said.
And we're getting, the chat's been really helpful with these conversations as well. We did have somebody just say that they started with Wix, which was basic and good, but eventually they moved over to a Spectora site and that was much better. So, you know, I think that's somebody else tooting our horn. So appreciate that. But also I think, you know, as Kevin said, there's a lot of different hosts out there. There are some that specialize in kind of doing good things on an SEO front for WordPress. And I know that we, you know, do our best to make sure that the sites that we're hosting are set up in a good way. Next one, my partner and I serve the entire Colorado Front Range and only have service areas set up with our Google profile. Would you recommend that we set a business address or just service areas? Is there a benefit to having an address on maps?
Yes, there is a benefit to having an address on maps. I say if you're okay with putting it there, just not from like a customer standpoint, but from a Google standpoint, yes, there is. But make sure you have all your service areas built out. And something else that I want to touch on that goes more into the website part of this and not the Google business profile is if you have multiple service areas, you can even consider having a web page for each of those specific service areas, and that can help you rank too outside of your Google business profile. But yes, the benefit to having an address is that Google tends to they favor a location and someone who's actually local. So yes, put your address there. The other weird part of like not having an address listed is sometimes it'll show you in a random area where you don't operate. So that's important.
Awesome. And then this is a deep one. If you want a good monthly strategy, what is the amount that is reasonable to spend per month to get a good forward motion? How do you weed out the best from all the SEO companies that reach out to you? What is really important, what they do, and what is not important? And do you have any recommendations on SEO companies to contact?
Oh man, that is a lot to go over all at once. First of all, I really can't answer how much you should spend because that's going to be different for every business. What I will say is it should be relative to how much revenue you're bringing in. And I wish I could give you a good answer, but I can't. As far as finding like the best SEO services, I don't have any recommendations off the top of my head aside from like depending on what you're looking for. I'm shamelessly going to plug SEO Boost from Spectora if you're really looking on like for those basic foundational aspects of SEO. But look at reviews, see if you can find someone else who's worked with them. Basically everything we just talked about this webinar of why your SEO is important to have a good business, like actually dig in and do your research on the companies and make sure you feel good about partnering with them because other people have had good experiences with them. Don't just, you know, take their word for it because they're definitely trying to sell you on something. And I don't mean that even in a negative way. That's just what any service will do. So take some time and do your research would be my big advice there. Kevin, do you have anything else on that?
I have so many opinions, and I'll make this quick, but I mean it in a negative way when I say most agencies are bad and they suck and they're selling you something you don't understand. Like, let's just be real. It pisses me off. We should make more content on this, Olivia. I would say if you're within your first couple years, there's a good chance you don't need an agency that's going to slap you with $1,000 a month plan because of everything we just said. The Google reviews and the local signals that you generate on your own by going to visit agents, whether it's, you know, writing content on your site with your expertise. This is the hard answer. It's you and it's light tools that help you get the local listings right away. Because if you throw the kitchen sink at it in year one, guess what? You don't have all those other signals and reviews and click-throughs that are actually going to help your SEO. So to me, that's why it feels like running in place to shoot the cannons off right away.
Yeah, and just on that point, thousands, exorbitant monthly fees if you're just starting to build your SEO probably is a flag that not even that it's bad, but it might be more than you need. And as Kevin said, starting with the basics is the way to go when you're starting out. And then, a couple years down the road, you're building your business, you're adding tons of service areas, maybe you need more advanced SEO for your site. That's when you can start looking at bigger agencies that are going to provide much more full stack SEO.
Fantastic. Well, we've hit time for this webinar, so there's a couple other questions in there. We'll definitely try to reach out to you guys and answer any questions that you may have, but really appreciate the time. Guys, any last thoughts before we go?
Just want to thank everyone for being here. It warms my heart to see people showing up to these webinars and to see all you guys wanting to learn about how you can make your business better. Like, this is why we put this on, and I really hope that you are getting good knowledge out of this and actually applying it. So just thanks for being here, and if you have any questions, you can write into the chat bubble, or you can email me directly, olivia@spectora.com, and I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks, everybody. I'm pumped that you guys care enough to invest in your business and think about these things. Like, this is what it'll take in 2024 for those that succeed.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful day, everyone.